There was a measurement. It's 350 times higher for a Bluetooth headphone than it is for a wired headphone.
There are some experts that believe cell phones are a potential risk for cancer.
I'm no expert, just my opinion. They're definitely a risk of cancer. If you expect or suspect that cell phones might be adding to that, there's a really easy solution. Don't put the thing up to your head. If I have to put my phone in my pocket, it's going on airplane mode, especially now that the cell phones have become more powerful, 5G, things like that. I'm not saying that there's a problem with 5G, but it was not until I had a 5G phone that I had the itch in the leg. What if you have the GPS and location data on? How much is that affecting back and forth? You have a very precious resource. Your mind, your brain, your body, the cells in your body. To have a cell phone that close to you that often causes concerns. So what would you rather do? You'd rather be safe or you'd rather be sorry?
Truth or scare. On today's episode, the claim is wireless Bluetooth headphones are dangerous because they emit radiation that might cause brain cancer.
They're dangerous. They cause tinnitus in me. And I have a blessing, I suppose, because by causing that tinnitus, which is maddening, I don't use them. I use wired headphones, and even the earbud ones or any kind of Bluetooth, I keep it away from my head. I don't use the phone next to my head like that. Almost immediately causes tinnitus in me. I can feel it. I can sense it. It's miserable. It makes me feel ill. So I use the phone all the time, but it's like this on speakerphone, preferably on the table where I'm not even holding or touching it, or I'll have it on a tripod handle things. And if anything, I'm going to go through the speaker in my car, or I'm going to go through wired headphones. So I know that they cause problems because I had the blessing of experiencing issues with it that were a big enough warning sign to where I stopped doing it. I'm also convinced that my mom passed away from cell phone radiation. She always used to have the phone like this. One day she woke up, there was like an egg-sized tumor in one of her lymph nodes right there where she held the phone.
And AirPods are riskier than other types of headphones. Let's start with saying that all wireless devices, Wi-Fi routers, baby monitors, cell phones, video game consoles, smartwatches, headphones, and more emit EMFs, also known as electromagnetic fields, which
Correct.
are technically a type of radiation. Bluetooth technology uses radiation in order to connect one wireless device to another, such as headphones to an iPhone or laptop. EMFs actually exist on a frequency spectrum where frequency essentially means energy. And we can split these EMFs into two main categories based on that frequency. High frequency EMFs are considered ionizing radiation. A lot of exposure to that kind of radiation can change human cell structure enough to cause cancer.
So, seems like it's proven to me. Let's keep going. The court is not adjourned yet.
X-ray machines, CT scans, they all emit low levels of ionizing radiation, which is why precautions are taken to use them as little as possible. UV light is also ionizing, which is why I always say wear sunscreen and avoid tanning beds your entire life.
That's good advice.
On the other hand, EMFs from very low to mid-frequency are non-ionizing radiation. Non-ionizing radiation does not have enough energy to directly damage cell DNA, which is what happens when cancer develops.
I don't know that I fully believe that. Just knowing and understanding how waves work, I mean, you're going to catch peaks and valleys of waves or be at a nodal point, all kinds of different things that happen. And you have this brick of cells, right? And if you got waves that are going through it even at a low rate, there's going to be nodal points. There's going to be all kinds of different effects, especially when multiple waves come into you. So I don't think that you want to be around any of those types of radiations. Just my opinion.
However, with this claim, the theory is that low and moderate frequency EMFs might not be directly causing cellular DNA damage, but perhaps over time, because we're not just using these headphones for a second or two, that damage ultimately can arise. But what does the evidence tell us about all of this? To be honest, there haven't been direct studies on looking at the health impacts of radiation from Bluetooth headphones.
So everyone is using this and there haven't been direct studies to them? That's insane. That is nuts.
Most of the research exploring the potential link between non-ionizing EMFs and cancer has focused on cell phones. And although cell phones and Bluetooth headphones both emit the same kind of non-ionizing radiation, Bluetooth headphones emit a lot less of it.
But not none of it. So 10x to 400x. So that means The Bluetooth headphones, when I got them the first night, my tinnitus was gone. I'd been using nothing but wired headphones, and I was so happy. Oh, they came out. Finally, I don't have to sleep with a wired headphone, because a lot of times I can't fall asleep unless I'm listening to something like an audiobook or music or something. Summer can't listen to something when she sleeps, so I have wired headphones in, and when you're flipping over, like they get in the way, it's all kinds of problems, right? And I was like, great. In the ears, no problem. I can just have the bud, but I don't have to deal with the wires. The buds don't really bother me. The wires bother me. Woke up the very first morning, tinnitus back. Hadn't had it in months. Tinnitus, boom, back. And it's miserable. Sounds like an air conditioner is freaking miserable. And if cell phones, so there was a measurement. It's 350 times higher for a Bluetooth headphone than it is for a wired headphone. It's 10 to 400 times higher than that. So that means it's 350 to 1.2 million times higher if you're putting your cell phone up to your ear and your head. Don't do it. Keep that thing away from your head.
10 to 400 times less, according to one 2019 study. And at this point, there are some experts that believe cell phones are a potential risk for cancer.
I'm no expert, just my opinion. They're definitely a risk of cancer.
And they've been quite vocal about their concerns for a while. Back in 2011, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, which is an agency within the WHO that evaluates cancer risks, classified radio frequency radiation from wireless devices as a possible carcinogen. The main evidence at the time was a large observational study that actually didn't find an overall increased risk of brain tumors from cell phone usage. But the study did find a statistical association, so a correlation, not causation, between malignant brain tumors called gliomas and those who had the highest levels of cell phone exposure. But researchers warned that the association was not strong and that the data was hard to make sense of because there's so many confounders, meaning other factors besides cell phone usage that could have explained why people ended up with brain cancer. Then in 2015...
So talking about the confounding factors, right? That means that, well, we don't know whether it was any one of these 12 things that we suspect of being a problem. If you expect or suspect that cell phones might be adding to that, there's a really easy solution. Don't put the thing up to your head. Keep the thing like at a distance. Put a phone holder in it, get your hand away from it, and then use a pen that has a stylus on the end and use it that way. Come in less contact with the phone if you can.
More than 200 scientists petitioned the World Health Organization and United Nations for stricter rules around non-ionizing EMFs and referenced the 2011 decision to classify it as a potential carcinogen. The scientists argued that radiation emissions from wireless devices might be harmful at levels deemed safe under the existing guidelines. The petition came on the heels of a study that showed the heaviest users of cell phones and cordless phones were somewhat more likely to be diagnosed with meningiomas, which is a type of slow-growing brain tumor, but the association was again too weak for researchers to conclude that cell phone use generally caused meningioma.
Okay, they're talking about meningiomas, right? What about cognitive function? How do you know that you're not slowly messing up something in your head? You have a very precious resource. Your mind, your brain, your body, the cells in your body. To have a cell phone that close to you that often causes concerns. So what would you rather do? You'd rather be safe? You'd rather be sorry?
Some more recent studies have been done, and they do suggest a link between cell phone usage and cancer or biological changes that might enable tumor formation, but all of them had flaws or substantial limitations, so the results have been framed as a reason to do more research and not as clear evidence that cell phone radiation is a risk factor for brain cancer.
Fair enough. Let's do the research.
For example, one 2018 study found that high levels of radio frequency radiation caused cancerous heart tumors in male rats and mice.
So I want to tell you another story about cell phone use. I, earlier in this year, started getting itch in my left leg. Couldn't figure out what it was. I know what it is now. My cell phone, if not in airplane mode, if I put it in my pocket for 15 to 20 minutes, the itch comes back. In my leg, itches, radiation, right there. Right where the phone, the antenna, I usually put it in. I have it like this. It goes in the pocket and goes down. It's usually soft part to the screen to the leg, and that means that the top of the phone pointing right there, and it's right in front of where the cell phone lies. I started If I have to put my phone in my pocket, it's going on airplane mode. Otherwise, I have it like not on me, not in my hands, not on my body. I move it. Had an itch there. Tinnitus in the ears. Negative effects. Think my mom passed away because of a cell phone and cancer that was caused by it. Just my opinion, just my anecdotal experience, but I have personal experience in it, and I know for sure it's caused by the cell phone. I guarantee every time I put it in the pocket, if I forget, I'm like, oh crap, it'll itch. I'll feel it.
Nice. The study certainly made headlines, but researchers said the results could not be generalized to humans. First of all, the way that the rodents were exposed to radiation in the study was not how we use cell phones, and at the end of the day, rats aren't people. It's a good first step, and maybe it'll guide further research, but it doesn't give us a clear answer as of yet. Moving on, in 2020, the FDA published a review of 125 studies, exploring that potential link between radio frequency radiation and cancer. They looked at a mix of animal research and observational studies on humans. They found no consistent pattern to support a link.
So no consistent cause. So if you got rodents, I would want to know exactly how they were exposed to it. Was it a cell phone that they stick, I'm going to put this on airplane mode, next to their head? And did they stick, the rats sleep on it with their ear pressed against it? And how many hours do they do that? Compared to the number of hours that a human does it, and for how many years versus a rat? I mean, maybe it takes 2 or 3 or 4 years, but at a certain point it crosses over. You don't know. There definitely needs to be a lot more study on this issue.
There are good reasons to keep investigating these potential health risks of cell phones. They've evolved a lot since they became popular, and so has the way we use them. Also, we're no longer talking primarily about adults. Today, most kids have their own cell phones, and kids don't necessarily respond the same way as adults do when they're exposed to potential environmental health risks like toxic chemicals or viruses.
Correct.
So maybe the same will go for EMF. It's important for scientific knowledge to keep up with this modern technology.
I'd be at least as concerned for kids as I would be for the elderly or anybody. My late 40s and 50s when I'm discovering that, and I had a cell phone since like 1998. So that is 26 years I've had a cell phone. And especially now that the cell phones have become more powerful, 5G, things like that. I'm not saying that there's a problem with 5G, but it was not until I had a 5G phone that I had the itch in the leg. It was well before 5G that the tinnitus in the ears started, and specifically my left ear, which is much more that I use the phone in. It was far more in my left ear because that's the side that I always was holding the phone in.
So the call for more research isn't really a reason to panic, it's the responsible path forward. But let's go back to Bluetooth headphones, which became a bigger part of this whole conversation in 2019, when a Medium article that argued AirPods might be dangerous and referenced the 2015 WHO petition. The fact that the WHO petition had not specifically mentioned Bluetooth headphones didn't seem to even matter. The article came out the same year as AirPods did, so they were already in the spotlight. The Medium article also brought up the idea that the amount of radiation emitted by wireless devices isn't the only factor in their potential health effects. See, wireless tech emits short bursts of electromagnetic energy called pulses, which the article said might be able to cause cell damage at a lower intensity level than non-pulsing radiation could. One expert said this factor is ignored by government health agencies and therefore isn't captured by safety guidelines.
What? They need to study this crap.
Rat research on electromagnetic pulses, but as far as human health goes, this is not exactly an evidence-based belief. But is someone out there actually making sure your headphones aren't blasting you with dangerous radiation?
Is there?
Yes. The Federal Communications Commission, or FCC, sets maximum exposure limits for radiation emitted from cell phone towers, and all wireless.
Yeah, at once. But if you're sitting there, what's the average use of a cell phone for some people? 12 hours a day? More than that? Sometimes people are on the phone for more than 12 hours in a day. How does it affect if you're holding it in your hands, which is my big concern? What about if it's in your pocket on your body and constantly communicating? What if you have the GPS and location data on? How much is that affecting back and forth? What if a woman is put it in her back pocket? Worse, what if a woman is putting it in her bra right next to her breast tissue. What if you're holding it against your head and you're pushing and holding it there? What if you're doing that?
Wireless devices sold in the US. These radiation limits are based on how much radio frequency energy can be safely absorbed into the body, and they're lower than what's been deemed safe in research. That means there's...
Yeah, for how long? A stove is not hot, and I'm not going to burn myself if it's, oh, wow, that's only 140 degrees. If I touch that, it's not that hot. But if my hand is on it all day, it starts cooking. That, in my opinion, is what is happening with these cell phones.
There's actually a built-in margin of safety. The rate at which you absorb radiation from a device is called its specific absorption rate. This rate is based on emissions measured from the device when it's operating at its highest possible power level. Specific absorption rates for Bluetooth headphones don't come anywhere near the FCC radiation limits.
So the FCC radiation limits might be too high. I mean, who knows? And this is also a personal decision. Maybe it's not enough to cause a lot of harm to a lot of people, but is it something that you should be actually doing? That's a decision that you need to make.
True no matter which brand or kind you have. AirPods have unfortunately been singled out as more dangerous than over-the-head Bluetooth headphones because they supposedly emit 5 times as much radiation, and maybe that they sit directly inside your ear canal so they're closer to the brain. But the 5 times number, it's a myth. And the radiation from AirPods is well within the safer use range. Recent models emit a maximum of 8% of the FCC radiation limit, and that's the safe limit, so 8% of the safe limit. That being said, skepticism around wireless devices is widespread enough that the FCC published suggestions for how to decrease radiation exposure from them, while also clarifying.
Boom, use a speakerphone, earpiece, or headset to reduce proximity to the head. While wired earpieces may conduct some energy to the head, and wireless earpieces also emit a small amount of RF energy, both wired and wireless earpieces remove the greatest source of RF energy, the cell phone itself or handheld device itself, from the proximity to the head, and therefore can reduce total exposure. And I'm just telling you from my personal anecdotal experience, wired is fine. And from the measurements that we saw in another video, wired was 1/35th. So like 3% compared to the wireless ones.
This is wireless earphones, 22, 23. It was even up to 35 a second ago. This is the amount of radiation going directly into her brain. But let's look at wired earphones. All right, what do they have? 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.3. Virtually nothing. 140, over 140 times. I think that's 150, 160 times the amount of radiation with wireless earphones versus wired.
And then the wireless ones from this video are 10 to 400 times less than the actual phone itself.
Clarifying at the same time that the agency does not endorse any need to take reduction measures. But where?
I endorse everyone to take reduction measures. My opinion, but that's the purpose of this podcast, is to teach you stuff based on a lot of experience of a guy who has seen a whole lot for many years.
Where does all of this leave us? You're exposed to non-ionizing radiation from so many devices in your life. It's all around you. Exposure from Bluetooth is just a small piece of that pie.
Let me give you another example. Sun. If you're out and you're using a number 10 sunscreen, that's supposed to protect you and allow you to theoretically be out in the sun like 10 times more, sun exposure. But the more you're in the sun, the more and more and more, the higher your risk of carcinomas and skin cancer. I am a skeet shooter, and when I'm out in the sun, I wear a full head balaclava. I'm completely covered, and I'm like the only one in the world, I think, that shoots that way. Some people are like, everybody knows who you are because you wear that. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. I am very protective. I don't want to get another sunburn ever and for the rest of my life. You'll notice on some of our videos, you'll see a little bit of red here because I have glasses on. I actually put sunscreen right here on my nose. I put sunscreen basically around my eyes because that's the only part that's actually exposed. Okay, and depending on if I have gloves, like I'll get some sun like on the wrist. But if you're out in the sun all day long, no matter what kind of sunscreen that you've got, the more and more and more and more and more sun exposures that you got, the more risk that you have. At some point, you're cooking your skin or you're going to get skin cancer. And there are a lot of guys out there, and I'll meet these guys, and they see me on that, and the first thing they're talking about is why you do that. And I'm like, sweat, sun, smoke are the things that the balaclava, because I also have to breathe through it. And I'll see like stuff right here from the gun smoke that after the shot is done, I open my thing, you're exposing yourself to some smoke. And so I get to talk with them, and they're constantly telling me about all their skin cancers and things. Yeah, I had this removed. Yeah, look, I had right here, this is just removed, or I had this removed, this removed, this removed, this, like all these different skin cancer things that are all related to too much sun exposure. I'm not saying that sun is bad for you, because sun, vitamin D, some exposure to the sun, but excessive sun exposure is a lot. And if you're in sun all the time without protection, well, where's your sunscreen for your cell phone? Do you have one? It doesn't exist. So you have to minimize your exposure to this. Just my opinion.
Bluetooth worries were and are mainly based on the possibility of cell phones causing harm. And we currently don't have strong evidence that cell phones are harmful, at least in that sense.
I do. A mom died for it. Just my opinion. And my leg itches, and I have major tinnitus in my left ear, which is the ear that I use my phone from. And whenever I do use it and do that again, those symptoms come back. I have no question about it in my life. I'm sharing this anecdote with you because I pray to God you don't get tinnitus. And if you've got that tinnitus, get the phone away from your head. Do that. And within about 2 years, you won't think that you have tinnitus anymore.
And the leap to Bluetooth is probably a huge one, given that they release so much fewer EMF than cell phones. And that's because cell phones need to communicate with cell towers miles away. A Bluetooth device only needs enough radio frequency to connect with a phone or laptop that's in the other room. Less distance equals less energy and probably less damage.
Less energy, less damage, but also it's exponential. Like the closer you are, it's multiplicative. So the farther away, just any amount of distance, there may be 1/1000th the amount of radiation at this distance as opposed to here. I'm not saying that that's your actual numbers. I'm using that as an illustrative example. But the closer you get, it's not a linear, if I'm twice as close, it's twice as much. No, twice as close may be 10 times as much. Twice as close may be another 10 times as much. It's probably logarithmic.
One thing about headphones, though, that understandably makes people uneasy is that it's common to wear them for hours on end and on a daily basis. So this heavy usage is typical behavior. And if there's any chance they're dangerous to use and you've been using them a lot, I can understand those implications can be scary. But remember that right now, studies about cell phones and cancer that have involved humans have not been able to support a causal link. While we can't say with 100% certainty that there isn't one, but it's a good thing when researchers keep looking for something bad and can't even find it. If you're nervous about radio frequency radiation exposure, you could always take AirPod breaks or alternate between wireless and wired headphones. In fact, it might be a good idea to spend more time headphone-free and cell phone-free for reasons unrelated to brain cancer fears.
True as well.
Like the potential impact on your hearing, an accident risk, and cell phone addiction, because that's a real thing. So on my truth or scare scale, where 0 is complete BS and 10 is absolute truth, this claim gets a 3.5.
It's a 9 on mine. Not as much, not necessarily as much for cancer, but for an entire group of health-related risks. Actually, no, it's a 10 because I am confident that that's what took my mom. And so for me, it's a 10. And the fact that I've got a leg itch when I put it in my pocket, the fact that I've got tinnitus in my ear, and I use a cell phone a lot, I'm concerned enough with it being out in front of me. And also, your eye is looking at a screen for that many hours. There's issues with that. I have really good eyes, but there are times where if it's starting to get late at night, like I start to not be able to see as well, and I'm tired, and like I got to go to bed. But that cell phone addiction thing will get you. And the workaholism. I'm heavily addicted to workahol. I'm a workaholic times 100. And, I'll stay up till 5 o'clock in the morning and keep them working because I just don't want to stop working. And you get a sleep disorder and all kinds of stuff. So be careful with it. We hope you learned something. Like, subscribe. Tell us what you think in the comments. If you have any examples that you can trace down, like a leg itch, tinnitus, cancer, any of that, tell us in the comments. Let us know. We're going to read those comments and see it. And please share this podcast. Help us grow with anybody of your loved ones. If you can get them to use the cell phone less or use wired instead of wireless earbuds, use the speakerphone, not put it up to their head, then it makes it absolutely worth it. So we hope that this has helped you. We'll see you in the next episode. This is the Lawyer Dana Show.